And we are back. Shout out to everybody part of the YouTube channel. This is a long form specialty drop just for you guys. I just wanted to kind of dive into the biggest takeaways this offseason in the NFL. You know, we got Mike Evans going to San Francisco from Tampa Bay. I thought that was kind of a shakeup. I know we had the McDuffie trade going from Kansas City to the Rams. So that's going to be a nice cornerback pickup for the Rams. I think especially going down the stretch the last 2 years in the playoffs. I think where they got hurt was cornerback, and that was kind of supposed to be one of the, their defense was supposed to just be one of those areas I think that they were supposed to improve in, but in the playoffs, it just honestly did nothing, and that happened. Same with the Eagles. Their defense was supposed to be holding them down. We get to the playoffs, I mean, they're a walking bucket. Mike Evans to San Francisco. The real question is, does he have anything left in the tank? And that's kind of where I'm stuck at a standstill because I think he does. But to be honest, to be fair, I've never been a Mike Evans guy like that. But then you just watch him play on just a random Monday night. And the guy is just, he's so much taller than people. He's able to go up and get the ball, which I think is an underrated trait. Like, everybody talks about JSN. JSN can't go up and get the ball. You know what I mean? He can't moss nobody. You don't really see him do that. Mike Evans sure can. So it's like one of those unique skill sets, and you wouldn't really understand it unless you I played with a guy like this. When you play against players like this, especially high school, college, you start to see, you're just like, oh, some guys are just unique in their assets as well. Mike Evans sometimes can get over the top. Nowadays, it's going to be rare he's getting over the top of a DB, and if he does, it's definitely going to be a pulled hamstring. Also, Tua moved down to the Falcons for about 1.3 million, but he already got paid out from the Dolphins. I think he's just going to have to, if he wants to maintain a position in the NFL, he needs to be a backup. And I think he needs to work on being a good backup. And this is what I tell people all the time. There's only 32 of these positions in the nation, in the world, to where you can be a starting quarterback, get paid, and live a fruitful life. If you can't be one of the 32, be one of the 64. Be a backup. You know what I mean? Why not be one of the greatest backups in the NFL? Look at Joe Flacco. I forgot the guy's name, but he came in and played a couple games for us as an Eagle. But some of these backups just float around the league for years. And there's just no point, if you can't be a starter, you can always have a job as a backup. Look, Derek Carr is talking about coming out of retirement. If you sit here and look at Joe Flacco and how just Joe Flacco has continued to, he even got to start last year and just be a focal point and be helpful and all of that. Joe Flacco's like upset when he has to go in the game. He's like, bro, I don't even want to do this. You know what I mean? Also, Malik Willis, in exchange for Tua, he ends up going down. Miami picks him up. And I like Malik. I really do. It's unfair to me that we just saw it with Sam Darnold. And it's just going to change the landscape of the league for a while after this Sam Darnold Super Bowl win. But where we write off quarterbacks in their first 3-4 years. I think quarterback is the hardest, as we know, hardest position in sports. Well, let's act like it. Let's stop expecting people to figure things out after 1 or 2 years. Sometimes you don't really get mature until you're 25 years old. Now I'm a quarterback. I'm mature. I know how to read a defense. I know exactly what we're looking for. You know what I mean? I've seen this a bunch of times. Practice. All of that. And I think we lose sight of that sometimes with quarterbacks. And I think their leash should be so much longer. And I think if we did that just throughout the history of football, there'd be some great quarterbacks still that we would have great stories about, but we just kind of wrote them off too soon. And, at least the NFL is kind of trying to correct it, but you know how they do. It's corrected for 1 minute and then it changes and then and then we'll just forget all about this. But, this judging quarterbacks in their first 3 years, I just think is so unfair. Look at Jaden Daniels his first year. Look at him last year. Now what? Now everybody has an opinion. He can't stay healthy. He's injury prone. Okay, if he goes 2 years now without getting hurt, then what? I just think we got to give these guys some time. Let's not get too high, too low. First 3 years, I'll come reevaluate fourth year when it's almost contract time and see where we're at. And even then, sometimes they're not ready. But Malik Willis to Miami, I like him. I think he has a strong arm, athletic, and I think he's figuring it out. I think he's going to be a solid piece for him. The problem is I don't know if Miami has the pieces for him. Kenneth Walker to the Chiefs. I think this is the fantasy football trade of the year right now. Definitely a top 5 running back. I'm going to go ahead and pencil him in. Probably maybe top 3. Actually, it's so tough to say because one thing about the Chiefs is they don't really use a running back. And sometimes I don't know if that's because they don't have a running back to use, or they just don't like to use the running backs. Because when Shady McCoy was playing with Andy Reid all of those years, I mean, it's stellar. You know what I mean? I think when Andy has a running back that he actually genuinely likes, which he rarely does. I mean, he did have Westbrook, he did have McCoy. So, but since then, it's just really been, you got Pacheco, you got fill-ins, you got Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I always thought Kenneth Walker was super nice. So for him to win Super Bowl MVP was no surprise to me. I said it probably first quarter in. I said, oh, he's got like 40 yards. This guy's about to win Super Bowl MVP. Like, there's not going to be a lot that happens this game to be where we should be getting. Anyways, Kenneth Walker, though, he should have been the primary starter for Seattle. My problem with Seattle is they wanted to implement Chardonnay so much. And hey, luckily they did, because, unfortunately, if they didn't, we wouldn't have got the performance we did from Kenneth Walker. But my problem was Kenneth Walker was so much more a superior back. And when you constantly cut into people's, you're cutting into my legacy. Really, you're cutting into my record books. You're cutting into how good I actually am. You've affected now my my dollar earnings because you decided to have me split carries. And I think they're talking about doing the same thing in the Raiders, down in Vegas with the Raiders and Ashton Jency. Once you implement another solid running back, like, that was my thing with ETN and Tank Bigsby. Tank came to, it was Tank and Saquon, and there was times last year where I'd rather see Tank run than Saquon. It just looked like Tank had more in the tank, pun intended. But I say all that just to say the Kenneth Walker to Kansas City is going to be explosive. It's going to be fun. I think Kansas City is really going to be good. I think Patrick's going to try and come back first game of the year. I don't think he's playing around. I think they're making the right moves. And hey, man, when you have Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, you're in a blessed situation. You can't really complain, and you got to feel like every year is a possible year. The AFC, is Herbert going to get it done? Is Lamar going to get it done? Is Josh Allen going to get it done? And while I'm on the Lamar conversation, that Max Crosby trade, I think, was just bogus. I just think that's the worst way to handle business as a business owner. I think that's just, I don't even like talking about it, because it's just like, how y'all got cold feet and revoked the trade and tried to say it was because of he didn't clear medical. I just think that's super unfair. There should be a arbitration group that steps in. My doctors don't look at it. Your doctors, they both can monitor, but once the deal is made and it's gone through, there's a third party who's also a doctor and says, no, this is fine. This was, you know what I mean? Because I just think that Raider situation, then they go out and get Trey Hendricks. I just think that's so nasty. I really do. And, they were talking about they wanted Trey Hendricks and Max Crosby, both the Ravens. Yeah, well, doesn't every team? You know what I mean? And if you were going to go out and get them both, to what extent? Because if I'm the Raiders, there's no way I trade with the Ravens at this point after what you did. Even if you do decide to give me somewhat of a similar, trade, but which I don't. I think Max might end up, this just might be a sign from God to just stay in a Raiders uniform. I'd love to see him in Philly, but I just, when I look at the Raiders, I'm like, Max Crosby is the tone and definition of what you guys needed on that defense that I feel like Baltimore's always had. And for you guys to just kind of punt on that, it's kind of weird. It's like, who do you guys think you are? Like, you guys have came up short. You guys need a voice. You guys haven't had really a voice on that defense since Ray Lewis and then Terrell Suggs. Since then, it's really been null and void. You just have got big names. They haven't done big things. And I think come playoff time, you're going to need a name like Max Crosby, which would be nice to have around. But to be fair, it's rare that these defensive ends get maxed out and then they go on and win an NFL championship. It's almost kind of like quarterbacks. And once you end up maxing out players to like the furthest extent, it just never goes well after that, from what I've noticed. Another notable, trade that's kind of went down in this offseason of 2026 is Jalen Phillips. Speaking of defensive end, Eagles thought they had an opportunity between 22, 26 million, I'm sure, to go out and get him. When Carolina Panthers offered him $30 million, and that's what's going to start happening. You're going to get a lot of players just complaining and moaning about how they're not happy with their organizations. Well, guess what? Stop taking all the big money. You can't have it both ways. You can't be rich, stanky rich, get paid out, maxed out, and then go play for the team of your dreams. It just doesn't work like that. If you want to win and be competitive, you have to sacrifice millions, especially in the NFL. That's why in the NFL, you're never going to see that. You're going to always see players go to teams you don't think qualify for their standard because they're paying. You saw how Myles Garrett just shut up Didn't want to play for the team last year in the offseason. Signs his contract. Had the best career, most sacks ever, best season of his career ever. And since then, you haven't heard a peep from him. You know why? Because he knows he sold his soul, per se, and took the cash. And we just don't want to hear you, especially us normal people. We don't want to hear you complain if you go out and take the cash. Sounds like a you problem. You know what I mean? What else we got? Oh, last one. Let's end it on this. The Kyler Murray experience. Now, this is one of those conversations when I talked about getting rid of quarterbacks a little too soon for my liking. I think Kyler Murray is one that kind of fits the bill. I think Kyler Murray is a solid quarterback. The problem with him, and this is just being so real, is sometimes it's not about how good you are, because we can always go find somebody good. It's just the NFL. You know what I mean? There's always somebody looking to die for a roster. It's how you interact with others. And I think that Kyler Murray, just the way he speaks to people, his mannerisms, the way he walks, the way he talks, you see the like snappy, flary, I'm better than you, I know exactly what's going on. Hey, you get over here. Sometimes it's not about somebody being wrong. Other people are going to be wrong, especially if you're a quarterback. You're dealing with so much. You're going to be able to point the finger and laugh at people every other play. Hey, you did this wrong. Hey, you did this wrong. It's how you do it. And I think knowing how to speak to somebody, I think Kyler Murray is just one of those dudes. And I hate to say, oh, he's never been punched in the face. No, you don't need to be punched in the face to have respect for people, to know how to handle situations. I think Kyler Murray just really, he's always been the dominant primary force in anything he's done, baseball, football, and he's always been, like, in his mind, the best. And I think the NFL has a funny way of humbling you, because it will show you, no matter how good you've been in college, high school, and you just win, when you get here, it's so totally different. And I think this is one of those maturation processes that every man has to go through. And I think Kyler Murray's going through that right now. And I think he's going to come out, and he's now with the Vikings, and I think he's going to be a really solid player for them. There's no way JJ ends up starting. Nice dude, but there's a bunch of nice. Mason Rudolph was a nice dude. There's a bunch of nice dudes. Carson Wentz was a nice dude. But, it just, ultimately, you got to get out there and perform, and people got to kind of like you. It is a kind of do we like you industry as well. And sports is like that. Sometimes just because the coach likes you and thinks you try hard, he's going to give you the head nod over somebody who's actually better. Just how it works. Amazing kind of start to the offseason. I think there's going to be so much more. I think AJ Brown might be on the move. I think it's not going to be maybe anything quite as big, just because normally that happens earlier and we're already past that time. But this is one of the best weeks in football. People don't even really realize it. Like this, and first off, this like illegal tampering period. Like, it's just kind of cheesy. Like, just, hey, on this day it starts, and now you can go sign. Makes life easy. Thanks for tuning in. We'll do more of these. It's been a little minute. I've been on a hiatus. A lot of personal stuff going on, but good fun stuff. Went to see family, the whole nine. Gone for 2 weeks, but hey, I'm still making content. Thanks for being here. We out.